You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I've got to start with the big NBA trade. I've alluded to this previously, but it finally happened. The Blazers finally traded CJ McCollum. No, it is not the Nets trading James Harden. He hasn't been traded yet. Even though he's out tonight, he's still a Net. And yeah, I have alluded to a McCollum trade in the past. When the Blazers traded Robert Covington and Norman Powell, I said that McCollum could go. I remember a while back I brought up the possibility of a Kyrie Irving for CJ McCollum trade. Well, needless to say, that's not going to happen now. Because CJ McCollum has been traded to the Pelicans. This is the full trade. McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell are now Pelicans. In exchange, the Blazers are getting Josh Hart, Tomas Sadaransky, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Didi Louzada, the Pelicans' first rounder this year, if it lands between number 5 and number 14. If it doesn't fall in that range, the Blazers will get a future first rounder. And the Blazers are also getting 2 future second rounders. For whatever it's worth, the Pelicans at this very moment have the 9th overall pick. You know who has the 8th overall pick at this very moment? The Blazers. The Blazers could end up with 8 and 9. Kind of interesting how things like that work out. This is an excellent trade for the Pelicans. It makes them a legitimate threat going forward if everything goes right for them. I mean, one thing that you need to realize, the Pelicans haven't been at full strength all year. Zion Williamson has not played in a game this year. The last update we got, he had a setback in his right foot injury. He'd be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks. That report came out on December 16th. It's been 4 to 6 weeks. We haven't heard anything. God only knows if Zion Williamson is gonna play this year. Big men with foot problems. You gotta love them. So, okay, the Pelicans haven't been at full strength all year. Where are they in the standings? I'm glad you asked. Season ends today. They're in the play-in tournament. They're a half game up on the Trailblazers. The Trailblazers just made the team that they're chasing exponentially better. Make no mistake about it. The Blazers are blowing things up. They have no desire to make the playoffs this year. They want to rebuild for the future. I can't necessarily begrudge that logic. I mean, they've stuck with this core of Lillard and McCollum for years. And in 4 of the last 5 seasons, and 5 of the last 7 seasons, they've been eliminated in the first round. I'm not saying that's Damian Lillard's fault or CJ McCollum's fault. I'm just saying the Blazers have failed to put great rosters around them. I mean, their best year was 18-19 when they made it to the Western Conference Finals. But context is a little important there. They went up against a young Nuggets team in the second round that was getting its first taste of the playoffs. Nikola Jokic wasn't the Jokic that we've come to know and love. Same thing with Jamal Murray. It wasn't the best team in the NBA. And in Game 7 in that series, the Blazers only won by 4 points. It wasn't exactly the most convincing series win I've ever seen. And if you'll recall, Damian Lillard was dreadful in that game. He shot just 3 for 17 from the field and 2 for 9 from beyond the arc. If not for CJ McCollum dropping 37, the Blazers lose that game. But the Blazers did squeak by. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. They got swept by the Warriors. So just to be clear, in Damian Lillard's and CJ McCollum's NBA careers, they have never won a game in the Western Conference Finals. The Blazers have done an absolutely dreadful job of surrounding them with talent. There's no other way to put it. Eulogy deserves all the criticism he gets. So here are the Pelicans. Because the Blazers have fallen off, they've lost 5 straight, the Pelicans find themselves in the play-in tournament. They got off to an absolutely dreadful start this year. They were 1-12 through their first 13 games. It didn't look like they had a snowball's chance in hell of making the playoffs. And the funny thing is, there's still 11 games under 500. But because the Western Conference is so bad this year, when you look at the bottom half, the Pelicans, for lack of a better term, treading water, has them in position to make the play-in tournament. Now, there were rumors earlier this year that David Griffin would be fired, that Willie Green would be fired, that the Pelicans would look to blow things up. Griffin doesn't want to lose his job. He's a smart guy. He sees the writing on the wall. What's his best chance to keep his job? If the Pelicans go on a big run. Season ends today. they're in the play-in tournament. Who are they going up against? The Lakers. The Lakers are not that good this year. I understand on paper they have LeBron and they have AD and they have Russell Westbrook. But watch them play. They're not that good. They're beatable. In a one-game playoff, I could very easily see this Pelicans team with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas, Devontae Graham, and maybe Zion Williamson beating this Lakers team. I could see that happening very easily. So what happens in that case? The Pelicans would go up against the loser of the 7-8 matchup to decide who's the 8th seed. Season ends today. The Timberwolves and Clippers are going at it. In the 7-8 matchup, let's say the Timberwolves win, just for argument's sake. They have the better record right now. They're 2 games up on the Clippers. Let's just say it's Clippers-Pelicans. The Pelicans don't have to change hotels. With no Kawhi Leonard and Paul George needing to carry the load in the playoffs, I could very easily see the Pelicans sneaking into the 8th seed. They will get their doors blown off by the Suns. Okay? They won't win a game in that series, but they'll be in the playoffs. And that is enough to save everyone's job. Everyone stays happy. Zion Williamson comes back to a team that made the playoffs, that beat a Lakers team with LeBron James, a Clippers team with Paul George, and he's happy. Pelicans fans are happy. Everyone's happy. I mean, think about this starting lineup going forward for a minute. Devontae Graham, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas. Next year, assuming everyone stays healthy, that team could do very special things in the playoffs. This is a fantastic trade for the Pelicans. A great job by them in seizing the moment that presented itself to them. If the team that's nipping on their heels right now wants to get worse, and in the process make the Pelicans better, sure, I'll do that. If I'm David Griffin, I'll help you help us. I'll help you make yourself worse. This is a coup for the Pelicans. This is fantastic. I understand that their depth may suffer from this. I mean, the players that they traded aren't nobodies, but for CJ McCollum, you do it. CJ McCollum, his whole career, has been incredibly underrated. Why? Because he's playing with Damian Lillard. Lillard gets all the headlines. Meanwhile, McCollum drops 20 points every game. Counting this year, the last 7 seasons, he has averaged over 20 points. His worst field goal percentage in that time span is this year, 43.6%. That's not bad. His worst three-point percentage came in 18-19, 37.5%. Again, not bad. CJ McCollum is a really, really, really good player in this league. No one knows about him because A, he's played for Portland his whole career, and B, he's playing with Damian Lillard. CJ McCollum, at this very moment, may be the best player on the Pelicans. Who's better, him or Brandon Ingram? It's close. It's closer than you think. They're different players. And I understand if you want to bang your fist on the table and say it's BI, I'm not going to begrudge you for that. But I think it's closer than you may initially think. Let's put it this way. He's in the top 2. And when Zion comes back, he'll be in the top 3. A big 3 of Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum? That sounds pretty darn good to me. Great job by David Griffin. I mean, look, the Pelicans did give up some good players here. I like Josh Hart. I've always liked Josh Hart. Can guard multiple positions. Good scorer. This year he's averaging 13.4 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, and 4.1 assists per game. He's shooting 50.5% from the field. Just 32.3% from beyond the arc, but 50.5% from the field. That's pretty darn good. I've liked Hart for a really long time. I thought it was a good job by the Pelicans in getting him in the Anthony Davis trade. And I think Hart's proven that he's a good player in this league. The thing is, though, who's better? CJ McCollum or Josh Hart? The answer is CJ McCollum. It's not even close. On Josh Hart's best day, he's not as good as CJ McCollum. Nickeil Alexander-Walker never really got to the level that we all thought he could. He's regressed this year tremendously. You look at his per-game numbers. His points per game are up. His assists per game are up. His rebounds per game are up. Okay, that's all well and good, but his field goal percentage has plummeted. It was 41.9% last year. This year, it's 37.5%. From beyond the arc, he shot 34.7% last year. This year, it's just 31.1%. Alexander Walker didn't take that leap that everyone thought he could this year. I'm not saying I'm giving up on him. I still like him. He is putting up 12.8 points per game. That does mean something. I understand he's shooting the ball more, but there's talent there with Alexander Walker. There's still some upside there. I do like him. Was he hitting a little bit of a wall with the Pelicans? Maybe, but I don't think anyone can look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker and call him a bust right now. Can he get there? Possibly, but he's not there yet. Alright, I do like him. Let's put it this way. The Pelicans would have kept playing him if they didn't pull off this trade. He's a solid player. Not as good as Hart. And he probably won't turn into what we thought he could in the offseason, but I'm not giving up on him by any stretch. And Tomas Sadaransky has been absolutely useless this year. He's been in and out of the rotation at certain points. He's really not that good. I've never been a huge fan of his. He's not awful. Solid passer. good ball handler, but that's about it. And Didi Louzada, God only knows what he's going to turn into. This guy has only played 5 games in the NBA. No one really knows anything about him. He's a lottery ticket, okay? You don't need to know too much about him. So yeah, maybe, just maybe, the Pelicans' depth took a little bit of a hit. But certainly not to the extent that you first think when you hear about this trade. And also, the Pelicans are getting another really good player back. Larry Nance Jr. is a good player in this league. I really, really like him. Double-double threat every night. Has a really good feel for the game. Gets into the passing lanes. Active hands. Always thought he got a little bit of a bad rap with the Lakers. Was able to turn it around with the Cavs. He had some good years there. And for the Blazers, he was a good bench player. Just under 7 points a game, just over 5.5 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, a steal per game, shooting 51.5% from the field. I like Nance. I really do. A lot of players, when they're with the Lakers, are immediately expected to contribute. And if you're a young player, you don't have the luxury of taking your lumps and getting better organically. You need to hit the ground running. And that's cost the Lakers. No D'Angelo Russell. No Julius Randle, Larry Nance Jr., Kyle Kuzma. A lot of good young players have been Lakers. But because their fan base is so ravenous and they want instant results, they didn't have the luxury of developing. And Tony Snell, you don't need to know anything about. I don't like Tony Snell. I've never liked Tony Snell. Always thought he was incredibly overrated. Signed a big deal with the Bucks after having a career season in 16-17. Then the Bucks quickly realized their mistake. And this will be his 5th team in the last 4 seasons. He's been a Buck, a Piston, a Hawk, a Trailblazer. Now he's a Pelican. He's really not that good. But still, outstanding job by David Griffin in getting CJ McCollum and Larry Nance for Josh Hart and a few lottery tickets. I mean, that's what draft picks are. That's what young players are. They're lottery tickets. Some work out, some don't. You know what the definition of that is? A lottery ticket. I love this trade for the Pelicans. As for the Blazers, it makes sense that they're blowing things up. You know, I said it before, the Lillard and McCollum era was a failure. I'm not saying that it was Lillard's and McCollum's fault. It wasn't. Bad job by Neil Olshey in surrounding them with talent. But it was clear as day that this core just wasn't going to work out. So what do? If you're the Blazers now? You build from the ground up. Again. Build around Anthony Simons. Build around Nasir Little. Build around Josh Hart. See if Nickeil Alexander-Walker can develop. See if Keon Johnson can develop. The Blazers want to start with a clean slate. They want to start from scratch. They really want to build from the ground up, which is fair. I have no problem with that. That's why the hauls may not be the greatest, because the Blazers are prioritizing young players and draft picks. I mean, does that excuse the Powell and Covington trade? Not really, but I understand the Blazers just wanting to start from scratch. Let's clear some cap going forward. Let's start from zero. That makes sense. I don't mind that. What they've done so far hasn't worked. When you build up a core and it doesn't work, you have two choices. You can either retool it, or you can blow everything up. The Blazers tried to retool a little bit. They tried guys like Rodney Hood and Gary Trent. That didn't work. So they brought in Norman Powell. That didn't work. So if the retooling doesn't work, you're left with blowing everything up. The big question is, when does Damian Lillard go? Because he's gonna go. If I'm Lillard, alright, maybe you stick it out for the rest of this year. There are only 2 months left. You've made it this far. You can make it 2 more months. But I think this is Lillard's last year with the Blazers. He just doesn't fit. If the Blazers are going with a youth movement, as great as Damian Lillard is, he's going to be 32 in July. Their backcourt of the future is set. It's Anthony Simons and Josh Hart. Damian Lillard is better than both of those guys put together, but he makes no sense for this Blazers team. He just doesn't fit. So if you're going with a rebuild, it makes 0 sense to keep the guy who would get you the most to help your rebuild. You know what I could really see happening? Because I do think Ben Simmons is going to stay with the Sixers through this year. I don't see him going anywhere. At the draft, Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons. I'm not saying it would be a 1-for-1 trade, but that would be the basic framework. Daryl Morey gets his star in exchange for Simmons. Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid is absolutely terrifying. Yeah, I know that means no James Harden, probably. But it wouldn't stun me if Harden stayed with the Nets. In fact, I'd like that. Meanwhile, the Blazers get a young player to help them with the rebuild. Someone who their fans can gravitate around. I mean, Simmons is going to be 26 in July. He fits the youth movement. He's not that much younger than Josh Hart. Think about the starting 5 that the Blazers can have next year. Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Nasir Little, Ben Simmons, and one of Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, and Jalen Duren. Depending on how the lottery shakes out, depending on if they can trade up. Oh my gosh. That team, in a very short period of time, could actually be really, really good. So look, this trade makes sense for both teams. I'll give the edge to the Pelicans just because the Blazers aren't finished yet. Their roster doesn't make a lot of sense right now. It can. In 6 months, it probably will. But at this very moment, the Blazers are in flux. They need to trade Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons. I don't care when you do it. Just do it within the next 5 months. And as for the Pelicans, watch out. They can surprise some people in the play-in tournament. Moving on now to probably a bigger blockbuster. The Pacers traded Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and their second rounder in 2027 to the Kings for Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. Holy Christmas. This is nothing short of insane. We knew that the Pacers wanted to blow things up. They're blowing things up. And they are doing it in a fantastic way. The Caris LeVert trade made a ton of sense for them. I praised them yesterday for it. I like the return of a first and 2 seconds and clearing out some cap room in the future. But now this? Getting Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield? Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I know why the Kings did it. It makes sense for the Kings too, but give the Pacers credit. I'm more impressed with them. We've known for a while that they've wanted to retool their roster. They are executing that retooling to a T. Next up, Malcolm Brogdon, maybe. Next up, Miles Turner, maybe. Keep it up. Let's go. If Kevin Pritchard can keep pulling off these great trades, keep it coming. And I'll give the Pacers credit for this. There are some GMs that feel the need to win every trade. You know, they'll nickel and dime you to the point where you're just sick of it. You don't need to win every trade. If you can pull off a trade that's beneficial for both teams, do it. The Pacers did that with the Cavaliers, and they just did it with the Kings. Good job by them. I mean, the Kings are in the play-in tournament race also. If the Blazers are bowing out, which it seems like they are, the Kings can very easily move into the mix. I mean, who's the team they're chasing? The Pelicans. What team just got better? The Pelicans. So how do you counter that if you're the Kings? You get better. You trade for Domantas Sabonis, one of the more underrated players in the NBA. Someone who, counting this year, has put up over 18 points and 12 rebounds and 5 assists in the last 3 seasons. He's made 2 All-Star teams in that time span. He shot at least 53.5% from the field in each one of the last 4 seasons. Again, counting this one. The one that got away from the Thunder, Domantas Sabonis. traded along with Victor Oladipo for Paul George. Think that trade worked out for the Pacers? Think that trade backfired tremendously on the Thunder? My goodness. You know, another thing that this does for the Kings is it clears out their guard rotation a little bit. The Kings had a ton of guards. And they've all been in trade rumors. De'Aaron Fox has been in trade rumors. Tyrese Halliburton has been in trade rumors. Buddy Hield has been in trade rumors. Now, at least there's some finality. Now we know what their rotation is going to look like going forward. You've got De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell at the 1. Let's say Terrence Davis and Jeremy Lamb at the 2. If you want to flip-flop them, I'm okay with that. Harrison Barnes and Justin Holiday at the 3. Domantas Sabonis and Marvin Bagley at the 4. And Rashawn Holmes and Chimzi Metu at the 5. That works. That makes sense. That's a clear-cut rotation. I mean, the Kings are going for it right now. And can you blame them for that? Can you honestly begrudge them for that? This is a team with the longest active playoff drought in the NBA. They haven't made the playoffs since 2006. You remember what I said about the Pelicans going up against the Lakers and Clippers? The Kings can beat the Lakers and Clippers in 2 one-game playoffs very easily. I'm not sold on this Lakers team whatsoever. And the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard are going to do nothing in the playoffs. So they end the drought. Yes, they'll get destroyed by the Suns. They'll get swept in 4 games. But the drought will be over. Do I think they'll sneak into the play-in tournament? I don't know. But I definitely think they'll leapfrog the Trailblazers. I definitely think they'll leapfrog the Spurs. It's going to be a dogfight for that 10 seed between the Pelicans and Kings. Would it knock my socks off if the Kings snuck into the 10 seed? No, it wouldn't. And if you're going up against the Lakers and Clippers, book the plane tickets to Phoenix right then and there. Now I know the Kings fans are upset about this trade. They did not want to trade Tyrese Halliburton. And I understand why. The Kings have not been a good drafting team recently. There's no question about that. But Tyrese Halliburton falls into your lap at 12. You gotta wonder how all those teams were stupid enough to pass on him. The Pistons, the Knicks, the Suns. It defies logic. The Kings lucked into him. They took him, and he was everything that you expected him to be, and then some. Tyrese Halliburton has the potential to be an all-star in this league. Alright, I know Kings fans loved him. I really liked watching him play. Really good young player. If you want to tell me that the Kings kept the wrong guard, they should have traded Fox and kept Halliburton, that's fine. But then realize something. Odds are you're not getting Domantas Sabonis. Who's the better player right now? Domantas Sabonis or Tyrese Halliburton? The answer is Domantas Sabonis. This is a trade for right now. Will it work? Only time will tell. It's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to think that the Kings are going to fall short of the play-in tournament. They've got 2 games to make up on a Pelicans team that just got a lot better. But realize, when the team that you are chasing gets better, what's your obvious counter? You get better. If you want to classify this as a panic trade, you can. I mean, it's one that can very easily blow up in the Kings' face. Would it stun you if the Kings never made the playoffs with Sabonis? It wouldn't stun me, and maybe Tyrese Halliburton turns into the next Reggie Miller in Indiana. But you've got to go for it. Sabonis is better than Halliburton right now. He just is. 5 years from now, who knows where these guys are? Maybe Sabonis stays great. Maybe Halliburton falls off a cliff. I mean, you're betting on potential a lot if you're killing this trade. I understand that you're high on Halliburton, if you're a Kings fan, okay? Great young player. I like Halliburton. I'd take him on my team in a minute. If I'm starting a team from scratch, and I can have Tyrese Halliburton, yes, please. But the Kings had an opportunity to get better, to end the longest active playoff drought in the NBA. I can't begrudge them for seeing the window that presented itself with the Trailblazers bowing out and the Pelicans getting better and saying, you know what, we're going to trade for our own great player. I'll see your McCollum and I'll raise you a Sabonis. I understand the Kings' logic here. I really do. And Jeremy Lamb and Justin Holiday are good players. They're both very similar. They'll both get you about 10 points a night. Lamb was having an off year with the Pacers, but he wasn't playing a lot. He's a good backup. Good mid-range shooter. Decent penetrator. Not the worst shooter in the world. Lamb's a solid player. I have no problem with him starting for as long as Terrence Davis is hurt. Justin Holiday is probably a little better than Lamb. Better shooter. Better bucket getter. Iron Man. I really don't have a huge issue with this trade for the Kings. Is it possible that it blows up in their face? The answer is yes. But I understand the logic. And it wouldn't knock my socks off if the Kings became the 10 seed and beat the Lakers and Clippers. I'm not going to kill this trade right now. I'm just not. I see the risk. It's a huge gamble. There's no question about it. And I don't begrudge Kings fans for being upset about it. But I'm not going to kill it. Having said that, if you're a Pacers fan, you've got to love this trade. I mean, if you were going to trade Domantas Sabonis, you wanted players like Halliburton and Buddy Hield. We had heard in the past that Hield was upset with the Kings. He didn't like coming off the bench. Those rumors died down a little bit, then they popped up a little bit. I like Buddy Hield. I think he's a starter in this league. And the thing that you need to realize is that the Pacers aren't starting from zero like the Trailblazers want to. If they stop here with their trades, they're set going forward. You could throw out a starting lineup of Tyrese Halliburton, Malcolm Brogdon, Buddy Hield, TJ Warren, and Miles Turner. I understand that TJ Warren is a free agent, but I could see the Pacers bringing him back, even though he hasn't played a lot this year and last year. It just wouldn't knock my socks off if the Pacers brought him back on like a 1-year prove-it deal or something like that. I could see Warren going for that. You think about the bench, it's Kiefer Sykes, who I love, Chris Duarte, maybe a guy like AJ Griffin in the draft, Goga Bitadze, and Isaiah Jackson. You're set going forward. You can trade Brogdon if you want to. I wouldn't mind that because it does clear a starting spot for Duarte. But you don't need to. Miles Turner, I wouldn't trade now. I just don't see who you're going to get to replace him. Maybe one of the big men that I mentioned for the Blazers, but then you're left with that hole at backup 3. You're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul. I have no problem with the Pacers keeping Turner. The final piece of this deal is Tristan Thompson, good backup center. Really good rebounder. Not a good defender, but good offensive player. I've always liked him. Thought he meshed well with LeBron when he went back to the Cavs. There are rumors that he could be bought out. I wouldn't mind him on the Nets. What did I say yesterday? The Nets need talent. They just need to bring in the best players possible on the buyout market. Tristan Thompson's a solid player. So look, I'm going to say that the Pacers won this trade. Things can go wrong for the Kings here very easily. That's the thing. If they don't make the playoffs this year, if they don't make the playoffs with Sabonis, which wouldn't knock my socks off, this is a disastrous trade. I understand the logic behind it, but it's risky on the Kings' end. As for the Pacers, there's no risk here. They move on from a player who they've wanted to move on from for a while. They just wanted to blow things up. And you know what? They've done a great job of it. They got a great young player in Tyrese Halliburton. Really good player in Buddy Hield. I like what the Pacers have cooking. Give Kevin Pritchard and Rick Carlisle a ton of credit. They have that team pointed in the right direction. I promise you that. They will make the playoffs sooner rather than later. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. The last head coaching vacancy has been filled. The Saints promoted Dennis Allen. And I have no problem with this whatsoever. The Saints really wanted to promote from within. I mean, when we heard that Sean Payton was leaving the Saints, I brought up the possibility of Dennis Allen taking over for him. I mentioned Aaron Glenn also. I mentioned Pete Carmichael. There was nothing wrong with the Sean Payton system. The Saints would have been more than happy to run it back with Payton. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Hire someone with an intimate knowledge of that system. That was the only right way to go about this. I mean, Dennis Allen has been with the Saints for 12 years. He was a positional coach from 2006 to 2010. Then he left the Saints to go to the Broncos as their defensive coordinator. Spent just 1 year as a defensive coordinator before the Raiders hired him as their head coach. He failed miserably, went 8-28, went back to the Saints, this time as their defensive coordinator. And it took him a couple years, but he really whipped that unit into shape. For the last 5 years, the Saints defense has been really, really good. Give Allen a ton of credit for that. I mean, you think about deserving second chance head coaches, Dennis Allen has to be at or near the top of that list. He had to be the presumptive favorite from the outset. I mean, I know Aaron Glenn was mentioned, but can he have more than 1 year as a defensive coordinator, please, before he becomes a head coach? And can his defense be good? Last year, the Lions had a dreadful defense. No, that hire wouldn't have worked. Pete Carmichael would have worked, but he didn't want the job. So look, Allen was the right guy for this job. I understand that he failed miserably with the Raiders. But you know what? The second time candidates sometimes work out. Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll come to mind. You can throw Bill Parcells in there also if you want to. Granted, sometimes it doesn't. Adam Gase and Pat Shurmur. But I do think Dennis Allen will work out. I think this is the right hire. You know he's going to keep the same system. You know he's going to keep a lot of the same coaches. It wouldn't knock my socks off if Aaron Glenn went from the Lions to the Saints. I could see that happening very easily. You make him assistant head coach / defensive coordinator. If you want him to call plays, I wouldn't be upset with that. I mean, what's a better situation right now? The Lions or the Saints? The answer is the Saints. I could very easily see Aaron Glenn going back to the place where he ended his NFL career as their defensive coordinator. But even if he doesn't, this is a home run hire by the Saints. They got it right. I do think he'll do a good job in the Big Easy. Sometimes you don't need to overthink things. Sometimes the obvious answer is the correct answer. And that's the case here. Good job by the Saints. There was a death in the baseball world that I really want to talk about. And this is a hard one. I like this guy. I remember watching him play. I don't remember if I ever met him, but I liked him. And that, of course, is Gerald Williams, who died today at the age of 55 from cancer. In order to have a good MLB career, you don't need to be the best player. In order to have a lengthy career, you don't need to hit 300. You don't need to hit 30 home runs. You don't need to have 100 RBIs. If you go out there and do your job every day and get along with everyone and don't make waves, you can last in the majors for a while. And that was Gerald Williams. Gerald Williams got along with everyone, was an excellent teammate. Him and Derek Jeter were as thick as thieves. I don't remember if he was there when the Yankees officially retired his number on Mother's Day. I think he was. But Williams and Jeter were incredibly close. That's the thing that you remember most about Williams, but he had a solid career. He had a career that anyone would be proud of. I mean, this guy struggled to find his niche with the Yankees. He was a 14th round draft pick out of Grambling State in 1987. No one really gave him a ton of thought. But he kept working, he kept grinding. He had some cups of coffee with the team from 92 to 94. Certainly didn't embarrass himself, but didn't set the world on fire. Then, in 96, it clicked. Williams started more games in left than anyone on the 96 Yankees. In fact, on May 1st of 96 against the Orioles, he tied the Yankees' record for most hits in a single game with 6. Now, Williams wasn't supposed to start that many games. The Yankees' left fielder was supposed to be Tim Raines, but Rock got hurt. Then when Raines came back, and Darryl Strawberry came back, and they had Cecil Fielder, the roster got a little cluttered. So Williams was traded to the Brewers, along with Bob Wickman, for Graham Lloyd, Pat Lestache, and Ricky Bones. Williams struggled when he first got to the Brewers, but in 97, he hit his stride. He hit .253 with 10 home runs and 41 RBIs, set a career high in steals with 23. That's the thing you remember most about Gerald Williams. When you think about his play on the field, really good speedster. In the offseason, he was traded to the Braves for Chad Fox. Williams put together 2 really good seasons for the Braves. In 98, he hit .305 with 10 home runs, 44 RBIs, and 11 steals. The Braves made the playoffs that year, but lost to the Padres in the NLCS. Then in 99, Williams hit .275 with 17 home runs and 68 RBIs. He had 19 steals. The Braves made it back to the playoffs. Williams had an excellent NLDS against the Astros. He hit .389 and had 3 RBIs. The Braves won the pennant, but got swept by the Yankees in the World Series. Then in 2000, he signed with the Devil Rays. Was one of their first big free agent acquisitions. Williams had a really good 2000 season. It was probably his best year ever. He had .274 with 21 home runs and 89 RBIs. He had 12 steals. It looked like he would continue that in 2001, but he got off to a really slow start. The Rays released him on June 24th. 5 days later, the Yankees brought him back. The Yankees that year did not have great depth. Shane Spencer was good, but that was about it. Enrique Wilson was solid, but not great. I liked Enrique Wilson. Solid player, but nothing spectacular. The Yankees did need to improve their depth. They brought Williams back. Obviously, that made Jeter very happy. And Williams did his thing. Was not good with the bat. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Gerald Williams was good with the bat his second stint with the Bombers. But he was a great clubhouse guy, had solid speed, could play all three outfield positions very well. He was just a good backup outfielder. In 2002, he got off to a terrible start. Started the season 0 for 17. The Yankees sent him to the minors. The year after that, Williams actually had a cup of coffee for the Marlins. That is the year that the Marlins won the World Series. He did get a ring. He has 2 rings, 96 and 03. Give him credit. He ended his career with the Mets. Hit .233 both years. Again, decent speed, good glove, good clubhouse guy. You don't need to be a star to have a good career. Gerald Williams lasted 14 years in the majors. Why? Because he did his job every day, didn't make waves, was easy to get along with, and you know what? He had good speed, and for a 5-year stretch, was a really good starting outfielder. May he rest in peace. I don't like this year so far, man. A lot of bad deaths. This is a hard one, Gerald Williams. This is a really hard one. I remember watching him play. Man, this is tough. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.